Welcome to this, the fifth episode of Chakmah, Choter. On the surface, it doesn't sound like much of a prestigious title, Choter and all. And yet, there's an entire proverb from beginning to end that was written by David, the king of Israel, devoted entirely to this individual, whom Dode says is particularly wise. There's an entire chapter of Yeshaya, Isaiah, the 11th, that is also devoted, beginning to end, on this same individual who the prophet, inspired by Yahowah, says is like no other person in all of human history, and that he is imbued with the 7 spirits of Yahowah, beginning with Chakmah, wisdom. Now, the title itself, Choter, which only appears in these two places, in the 14th Mashal, proverb of Dode, and in the 11th chapter of Yeshaya, Isaiah, means it's the divine rod of justice. He is a stem off the main branch, a sucker that gives the fallen stump new life. So it's a vivid depiction of something quite useful in terms of productivity and also accountability. But it is one of some 20 titles that are afforded to this individual who changes the landscape of the world. Now, you wouldn't know that if you were to check out my Facebook, YouTube, or X pages, because 3,000 followers on one, 1,200 on the other, and about 2,000 on the third of those. And all the while, there are people that have millions of followers and subscribers and friends. And yet, according to God, at this time, the Chakmah Choter, the wise Choter, is the single most important person in the world. And the series we're doing now is one of several that we will and have done on introducing him to you, because Yisrael, Yehudim, Goyim, if you don't listen to him, you have very little chance of making it off of this planet alive. And the next 8.5 years are going to be horrific. Most people are going to die. What God has done is he has recognized, because he can see all time at any time, that his people were unwilling to change from the attitude that was exhibited really beginning with Abraham and then with Yishak, continuing with Jacob, through the children of Israel, particularly manifest during the entirety of the Exodus, exhibited for the most part throughout the kingdom of Israel and also the kingdom of Yehudah, and manifest yet unto today, is that the overwhelming preponderance, in fact, for most of that time, most of that 3,400 years, 4,000 years if you go back all the way to Abraham, there wasn't a single person that paid God any attention. Nobody. And in particular, while Jews claim, oh man, we say the Shema twice a day, doesn't that make us wonderful? We bow and pray. We celebrate Passover for a week's time. We celebrate the high holy days. Doesn't that make us special? We were called the chosen people. You remember that, right? No. God spends more time in his Torah and prophets denouncing his people's propensity to be religious than he even does encouraging them to be part of the relationship he intends. So God is hugely anti-religious. And because it is religion that has estranged Yahweh from Yehudim, Jews, and because it has been this way for most of 3,400 years, and it has been entirely this way for the last 2,500 years, since the last of the prophets, which is Malachi, conveyed his message, Yahweh's message to his people, Yisrael, God realized that there would have been no chance whatsoever that in the years prior to his return, the Jews would have changed. That they would go from erasing his name, claiming his name can't be pronounced, replacing his name with Hashem, Adonai, and G-D, to embracing his name as Yahweh. From pining over a Messiah that has yet to come, that is unnamed, to embracing Dod as the actual Messiah who has been here twice before and who is going to return as king, who has served as the Passover lamb, who took their guilt into Sheol on matzah so that they might be perfected and enter God's company. The chance of those things happening without Yahweh doing something rather extraordinary. And since he couldn't speak through a Yehud, since there was none willing to listen to him, and since he couldn't speak directly to them because they had told him to shut up and go away, well, his response was to garner the attention of someone that he would call Yada, his Choter, a Nakri, the final Zeroah, his Kol, his son's Bashar, a Ed, an Ida, for the final day, someone serving as a Malak. That's a lot of Hebrew terms. What do they all mean? I told you what Choter means. The rod of divine justice. It is the stem off the main branch. It is a sucker that gives life to the fallen stump and the rootstock of Yehudim and Yisrael. A Nakar is an observant foreigner. A Zeroah is one who cultivates the seeds for the harvest. And Ed or Ida is a restoring witness. Malak is a spiritual messenger. Yada means to know. This individual is the Bashar, which is the herald of Dod, the returning king. He is the Kol voice of Yahweh at this time for his people. He is also the man who comes forth from Edom to save many, called the Adamah Parah, which can be rendered bloody red man of the earth who is productive, or the red heifer, depending on how you want to view his role. It's a lot of titles. He's also presented as a bull, and 3 or 4 different terms for bull that are applied to him. There are hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of prophecies regarding him. In addition to the 2 chapters, the entirety of the 14th Mashal proverb and the entirety of the 11th chapter of Yeshaya, Isaiah. And this individual has a responsibility. He is solely responsible for awakening Yisrael, getting them out of their stupor, so that they stop erasing Yahweh's name, so that they are reacquainted with their actual Messiah, the Son of God, and returning King, Dod, so that they understand how to engage in the Bereth covenant by accepting the 5 conditions, receiving the 5 benefits, so that they attend all 7 Moed Mikre, knowing what each of them represents, so that they know when the next 4 Moed Mikre are going to be fulfilled, realizing that Dod fulfilled the first 3, the spring Mikre, in 33 CE, and that the next will be fulfilled beginning on Shabuah on May 22nd, 2026, and the last 3, the Fall Mikre, all in 2033, year 6000 Yah. Teruah, Kapurim, Sukkah. This is the story that he must tell. This is what he must present to a comatose nation, all the while protecting God's people from their 2 greatest threats. Actually 3. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, which is why he's written 5 volumes exposing and condemning Islam so that God's people are aware of this threat and they stop lashing out at symptoms, thinking that that will cause them to prevail, so that they understand that Christianity is a complete farce from beginning to end, that there's no credibility whatsoever in a Jesus Christ or a New Testament, and that with that myth gone, they're in a position to embrace the truth that there is a Messiah and Son of God, and that he is the Savior, just that his name is Dod. And he told us a great deal about it. He's the author of this mashal that we are reading. So there's a lot to learn, a lot to share, a lot to communicate. It is a very big job. And Yahowah is all in. So you can pretend that you're far more interested in the accounts that have millions of followers, or you can listen to the one that Yahowah is sponsoring, that is communicating to you under the Yahowah blog. My beloved wife just made me a lovely drink. It looks like it has the top of a pineapple, a beautiful flower in it, and my guess is that this is watermelon juice. It is, and it is freshly squeezed. So that is a lovely way to keep hydrated as we do this live stream on your behalf. Speaking of the Choter, Dod wrote, the locus of his judgment and inclination, his motivation and inspiration, even his disposition, his thinking of this individual named Yada, is cognizant of, concerned about, and acknowledges the conscious capacity of his soul to observe and to respond to mora, bitterness and hostility, resentment and acrimony, rebellion and defiance, insubordination and recalcitrance, as well as experiencing genuine jubilation as a result of him overcoming adversity. Through it all, he is largely alone, never influenced by others, while avoiding any association with the pledges and vows of those who are illegitimate and unauthorized. Mashal Word Pictures, Proverbs 14:10. Well, so it starts off speaking of the heart. Now, in the case of Dod, when he writes about our heart, he's not speaking of emotion. He's addressing the seat of judgment, of our attitude, of our inclinations, of our inspiration, even disposition. If you were speaking about emotions in the ancient world, you would use kidneys and not the heart. And so the locus of his judgment, of this being Yada, is cognizant of, concerned about, acknowledges, is familiar with the conscious capacity of his soul to observe and respond. Nefesh. When I started this, I liked it because it was such a empowering verb. I was making a transition away from beliefs and faiths. In fact, I had read Twistianity. There's a rumor that we have lost our connection. I'll continue and we'll verify whether or not it's true. But under this pen name, it was anonymous. And I love the term because what we're searching for is to replace the faith of so many people who are religious with knowing. Wonderful name to use. And I even named the series of books, Yada Yahowah, to know Yahweh. Now, that name through years in advance. And so the next comment is Nefesh. There are lots of people who have translated the testimony of Yah. Oh, so the rumor is we have a bad connection. So we're just going to hang up and we'll begin this again anew. I apologize.